What's up, Bry?
Hey, Bruce.
How's it going, man? Gee, it's really dark in here.
It's kind of spooky.
My lighting situation is just terrible. I've tried to mitigate it on numerous occasions.
I think it's do. I think it's doable. It kind of makes you look kind of mysterious with the fan in the background.
Yeah, I
Before,
suppose I got some lights on here. I just can't get it worked out, man. I'm trying to do, no, that doesn't help at all. I need some sort of stage lighting, I think, kind of.
maybe you need some like smoke bombs too, or something.
Queen level, kind of.
Queen level, yeah. Pre John Deacon wearing overalls. Period. Queen.
That's a good. I go right up to that overall period. That's my period, man. You know, that's when I really hit my stride with Queen.
Yeah. Before they sold out with what was the first Queen record back when we were buying those records? Where you were when you went, we're in trouble.
I stuck with him right up to Jazz.
Jazz is the one. That's the first one where I was like, I don't really think I like most of this.
You know, I took it. There's some songs on there that there's always dead weight on all those records, no matter what anyone says, with the exception of, the first three maybe.
Yes.
Then you get into like even Night at the Opera. There's a few of those sort of really on rock songs where when you're 15 you just skip right over them. You know what I mean?
Like Good Company.
Good Company. What's on Day at the Races? You and I from Day at the Races is another one.
Just you and I. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
No, not tomorrow.
But the ones on Jazz that are not as rock, well, I shouldn't say not as rock, but the ones on Jazz that are from left field are a little bit better. Like Mustafa. Mustafa's, that's
the best song on the record.
I agree. Yeah.
I didn't, yeah. And then, so that, when that came out, I was like, oh, and there was also like a lot more songs, it seemed like, like there was a time I thought you weren't allowed to have more than 5 songs on one side of a record. So if anybody did that, I thought it was weird. Like, are they allowed to do, you have more than 5 songs on a record? Aerosmith doesn't have 6 songs on one side.
That's true. I had the whole black side, white side of Queen too. That was kind of weird when I was just, 14 or 15 to wrap my head around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that it had Baroque touches was just, I couldn't,
Also, the Fairy Fellers Master Stroke.
Yes. Yep.
Like what, And I think also back then, like people make a lot of speculation about people's sexuality, like Freddie Mercury, or even when I was getting into Rob Halford of Judas Priest.
Sure.
And without, the benefit of having sex or knowing anything about sexual attraction, I think I just kind of instantly realized, well, I don't think Freddie Mercury is a normal guy that likes girls. I think
my mom used to call them the Queens. not meaning anything by it. That's just how she is, in a sort of like Edith Bunker sort of lovable Edith Bunker sort of way, the Queens. But at the time, I was very adamant. They're not called the Queens.
It's Queen, Mom.
But I guess she really might have been onto something in a way,
I think so. Well, thanks for agreeing to talk to me. I think we're off to a good start right
I
away.
wish my lighting was better. I feel like I don't know, man. I gotta.
Oh, it's fine.
What can you do? I got a new shirt. You can't even see how great it looks.
I like it. It looks kind of Peter Brady-ish in a way.
Yeah, I'm feeling. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm wearing my Miles Davis shirt to make people think that I'm cooler than I am.
There you go. I'm rocking a Britpop look, I think. So people think I'm younger than I actually am.
Yeah, I think I gave up on that ghost.
Yeah, you and me both. Actually, I lost about 10 years once I started fully shaving.
Yeah.
Because this was coming in white, totally white. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you rock it fine, but I was just like, I needed a change. And and that was one of my big changes, clean shaven. I hadn't done that in about a decade.
Yeah. Well, let me try to get everybody up to speed here for the
Sure.
10 people, maybe 20 that will be tuning in right away
Sure.
when I edit this. So you're known primarily to a lot of people as being one of the guitar players of Adrenalin OD,
Yep.
which existed for a good chunk of time a million years ago when we were children.
Sure.
And you sporadically have reformed to play shows and
Yeah.
have plans to go overseas before the pandemic happened.
We did.
All kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I think a couple years ago you had relocated to Florida, where I think you're talking to me now.
I'm in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. To help your mom after I'm guessing your father passed.
My dad passed about 4 years ago, and then I moved down here a little over 3.5 years ago, maybe.
Right.
So mom's 85, so I didn't want her to be down here by herself. I couldn't move her up north because it's just too expensive up there, and everything she knows is down here. You know what I mean?
Right.
She retired like almost 30 years ago. I wasn't gonna move her up to Connecticut. That'd be ridiculous. So, and I really didn't have much going on up there at that point. I had gotten laid off from a job I had for 15 years. I was just kind of struggling myself, so I figured I'd change of pace might be okay. I wouldn't have chosen Florida myself, but
your mom lives there, so that's why you're there.
My mom lives here. That's why I'm here. And Dave lives only in Orlando. So before the pandemic, Dave from AOD, we hang out on occasion. So
yeah. So what are your thoughts of now that you've been there for a long time? Every time I go to Florida, I always think, because it has a bad reputation, so I don't want to harp on the bad reputation.
Sure.
I just always think, what a really different place this is for some reason. It just seems.
Well, what's weirder is that I'm literally in Central Florida. If you look at a map of Florida, I'm literally in the middle of the whole state. So I'm not even really near any of the tourist sections. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is Florida, and that's really weird.
Well, do you have moments where you have to go, okay, Mom, you're set up. I'm going to go do something so I can.
Oh, every day. Yeah, I always need to cut out some time for myself. She's really good about that, though. My mom's very cool. Even when I was younger and living at home, she was cool with having complete strangers come from Germany and sleep on the floor. And, the Rhythm Pigs stayed at my house, and White Flag. And, the typical punk rock parent thing. You know what I mean? So my folks are very cool about that.
How do these people know who you are, Bruce? Well, there was a support in Maximum Rock and Roll, Mom, and I had people show up at my house in Southern California. My parents were very bemused, to say the least.
Oh, that's great. One of my favorite stories involves our drummer Dave, where at one point he was booking shows, and he came home from school or whatever one day, and his mom said, "A useless piece of shit called for you." UPS from Arizona. That was such a great story.
And I remember them too. Of course, I remember all that stuff. It's just like one day you're a kid, the next day 40 years pass and you're still alive, and then you're having an interview with somebody that knows exactly what you're talking about and how rare that is.
It's good stuff, man. Yeah.
I know. I always forget. I forget. Oh wow, I'm how old I am now. But it seems like some of that stuff was just yesterday. Weird.
I was gonna say, even if we were mainstream, our references would be way out of date. So the fact that we're not mainstream makes it a little bit harder sometimes. Although you can find your people easier, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let me ask you. I'm just gonna ask you some stupid questions, and you answer however. So, so you weren't the original guitar player for Adrenalin OD, and you joined after they did the Let's Barbecue 7-inch, I believe.
Right about the time that was coming out, yep.
And the name of the original guy was Jim Foster, I believe.
Jim Foster, yep, great guitar player.
Now, did you grow up with the rest of those? I mean, obviously you must have known them from, and you all grew up in Connecticut, right?
No, we're all New Jersey.
You were all New Jersey? Okay. So
Yeah,
you just ended up moving to Connecticut later. That's right. Let's Barbecue, the Garden State, New Jersey. So you guys.
Go ahead.
So
basically what happened was I first met, there's maybe about 4 other punk rockers in my high school, and we were like maybe the first generation really, except for the year before us, there were a couple of girls into Patti Smith and the Ramones.
Yeah.
So we sort of, I grew up with a couple people. One of them ended up in Morning Noise and Bedlam. A couple of other of those Jersey bands. We were childhood friends, and then Jack from AOD, he arrived as the new kid in school, so I immediately buddied up with him, and I found out he lived down the block from me. So within like a week or so, I convinced him to deface his Rush Hemispheres t-shirt. I hipped him to the punk rock, and then from there, me and him met. We started playing in bands together, and then me and him met Dave, who we were under the impression he was like an adult kind of, but he was only 14 or 15 years old at the time. No, probably even younger than that, probably about 13 or 14. He offered to manage us. So that's how he came into the fold. And then somewhere during all this, we met Paul through an ad in the local arts newspaper. We were looking for a guitar player, and that was for a band called East Patterson Boys Choir.
Okay.
And then we played. This is probably about senior year of high school. We played a couple shows. We played a CB's audition night on a Monday. We played a picnic, the Clifton City picnic, and it wasn't until years later I realized that they actually thought we were a boys' choir. That's why they agreed to have. Yeah, that was very. I didn't put that together until years later, and then from there, right after I graduated high school, I think the band was just sort of on its way out, and I moved to Texas with my brother for a little while, for about a year, and then during that time is when AOD formed. We had seen Jim Foster around. We were familiar with him. I even remember seeing him on the line at Max's Kansas City, probably waiting to see Johnny Thunders or something. So the whole group we were rubbing shoulders with each other. And then after I left, they got him in. And then it wasn't long after I came back that Jim didn't want to be in the band anymore. So one of the first things I remember doing was helping put together copies of Let's Barbecue. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't in there that long. He really bided his time, though, and then came back with that Electric Frankenstein stuff, which was great. I mean, that was in the 90s,
Yeah.
But that's how that all really happened. So.
Right. Yeah, I forgot that you guys, I guess because I ran into you
in Connecticut,
that I guess I got confused. It's not that I get Connecticut and New Jersey confused.
It's very, they're very similar, and that was really led to us having simpatico with each other, where it was, we watched the same shows, we had the same, we were always really tight with Connecticut, always. The Jersey scene and the Connecticut scene. The Anthrax was like a second home for us, really. So.
Yeah.
And then when I moved up there, it seemed to be a logical move on my part, because this is post AOD, and I really didn't have much going on, and I shouldn't say that. I did have a lot going on, but I just needed to get out of there. You know what I mean? It was time to move away from home. So, and I knew people in Connecticut, and that worked out fairly well. So,
do you miss New Jersey at all?
I miss things about New Jersey. I often sort of half jokingly consider moving back there for the finale of my life, which would be crazy.
The grand finale.
Yeah, just so I can get Texas wiener hot dogs and good pizza.
What's that pork roll that they fight over up there? Because my wife spent time in New Jersey.
Yeah, there's a split
between. Like a rivalry that parts of New Jersey have with each other.
The North Jersey refers to it as Taylor ham, and South Jersey refers to it as pork roll. And it's called Taylor ham pork roll, I believe, or Taylor ham, whichever. But there's, people like to argue about that. North Jersey doesn't care about that, man. We don't care at all. We just eat the shit, So, and my mom called it Taylor ham. End of discussion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's nothing else needs to be debated.
Yeah.
So I was also, when I was thinking of dumb questions to ask, I was thinking about Glen Danzig and the Misfits and the legacy that they cultivated. And
Sure.
Did Adrenalin OD ever rub shoulders with Glen and
Sure.
like were you ever asked to audition or fill in for Doyle or
no, we did rub shoulders though, and Paul and Dave actually attended a rehearsal at the Pit, which is where their spot in Lodi where they practiced, which was known as the Pit. If you go on Misfits Central, I'm sure there are pages and pages written about it with schematics and everything. Floor plan.
That was like, wasn't that like they practiced where Jerry and his brother's parents live?
I believe so. And Dave and Paul managed to attend a practice, and I believe Dave recorded it too. And of course, it's floating around out there now on the web. People are like, "Oh my God, it's one of the rare Misfits rehearsals." And then when they were there, they did a new song called "Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight," which is why on the live record you can hear Paul yell out "Mommy" in the audience before they actually do the song. That's Paul Richard from AOD.
Wow, that's like recorded history.
And then the other weird thing is we played a show with the Circle Jerks at the Showplace in Dover, New Jersey in '84, I think. And it's when they had Chuck Biscuits on drums. And then the Misfits had come to see the Circle Jerks. And I guess maybe Danzig was sort of checking out Biscuits too. And then they asked to borrow our equipment. So we lent them our little transistor amps and shitty guitars with the promise they wouldn't break anything. And we played a terrible drunken set, and they came out and were even worse than we were. They played about 4 or 5 songs maybe. So that was kind of interesting. And I think that might very well have been the last New Jersey show they played until they did that reunion 2 years ago.
Did you attend that? Did you fly up for that?
No, I didn't, but we didn't. Me and Dave attended it on our podcast. Yeah, we had a short-lived podcast. I don't even remember what it was called.
Yeah, you guys did a podcast for a little bit, and I was like, well, this is gonna.
Yeah, it was this. This show sucks. It was called, and the very last one we did was from the red carpet of the Misfits reunion, which is actually pretty funny. So those are still online. You can listen to them. There's some neat stuff in there. We've got Keith Morris shows up. Paul Mayhern does an amazing spot on one of the episodes, and we had fun doing them. It was a real lot of work, and I think Dave sort of got disillusioned with the amount of work we were putting into it. So just, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's like they're like little treasures for the very small people that will be interested in that.
Yeah, I can get even darker back here, can't I? Look like I'm in an FBI surveillance video. I apologize. I'm so dark, everyone. Maybe I could move it up close. That's not going to do me any favors, actually.
So the reason I was wondering about Misfits is because Glen Danzig has been like the eternal whipping boy for a lot of people on the internet, and
that's true.
But I always think at the end of the day, well, this is a guy that had a vision, and he was also a very tireless advocate of DIY. I mean, he silk screened all of their shirts and their posters, and they had the Misfits Fan Club, and they were doing all this stuff that a lot of people didn't do at that time.
I really think they set off the whole collecting of punk rock records. I mean, that stuff, everyone wanted those 7-inches. They were collectible, and then no one had even thought in those terms before that, at least with punk rock and hardcore. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah. And he's has a good singing voice, and and now I just kind of think, well, I gotta really give it to him. for, because there was that video of him being hit in the face, and
Sure, he's done a few things to earn some of that derision, but
but overall,
who in the general public doesn't? You know what I mean?
yeah, it's kind of like everybody has this idea that human beings don't make mistakes or do dumb things.
Yeah, especially now during the with the internet and whatnot. I mean, it's easy to I could just as easily say something incredibly racist right now, and the next thing you know, oh boy. So, not that I could say something incredibly. I'm just saying as an example.
So as a bona fide racist, you're trying to curb your racist tendencies for this podcast so that millions of people
that's it exactly. Yep, that's me, all right. Oh, racist Wingate.
Old racist Bruce Wingate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I met you several times throughout this 40-year period.
Sure. Yep.
I saw Adrenalin OD play at the Cafe de Grand in the summer of 1984. You guys played with Cause for Alarm.
Yep.
And BGK from Holland.
Yep.
Some friends of mine in a band I would end up joining later opened up too. And I remember being very excited about that event. Did you play any other shows around Los Angeles during that time?
Yeah, I know that we did one with White Flag at the Cafe.
Oh.
That was actually the same night as that enormous Olympic show with all the international bands.
Yeah, I went to that. And
yeah.
I think the other show at the Cafe was either the next night or the night.
Yeah.
I think it was and then somehow we ended up going to the show.
Yeah, we played, we were out there 84 and 85. Well, I 86 and 88 maybe. But the earlier gigs, I know we played, trying to think of where else we played in early. I'm having trouble remembering. I know that we played Fenders.
I was gone by the time.
Oh yeah, we played Fenders. Yeah.
I think I went there a couple of times. Fenders was this apparent hellhole full of idiots, and
it was enormous.
Yeah,
and one of the largest crowds we played to up to that point.
Right.
To see a whole room full of people going nuts like that was just it was pretty cool actually.
Yeah. Then actually in 85, next year, I found myself in North Carolina.
Nice.
You guys had showed up in the middle of the night or something.
Yeah.
The late Reed Mullen brought you over to his parents' office, and I was sleeping on a sleeping bag on the ground. And I guess Reed went, "Hey, this is Brian. Brian, this is," and you guys trying to get me to wake up and draw you guys some cartoons. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I have.
Hey, Dave, get up.
I have one of the originals you drew for us that I ended up using for a flyer. It's from ended up being a Dickies flyer.
Wow. Actually, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
It sounds. I don't remember drawing that, but it definitely sounds just like me, that I would sit up right away and start drawing something.
Yeah. That's great, man.
The other thing I was kind of thinking of was this is your immortal song "Rock and Roll Gas Station." Would you say that's kind of like the Stairway to Heaven for Adrenalin OD? That seems to be getting the most plays on Spotify and whatnot. Yep. Yep. Well, and you told me that because you let us by Focal Media do a T-shirt.
Yeah.
And you told the story that the reason that song started was because there were a bunch of guys that looked like Barry Hensler, the Necros.
Yep, there was a gas station in my hometown, and we would invariably stop there on our way to wherever we were going, and we just started calling it Rock and Roll Gas because the dudes just had long hair and they just looked like rockers. And so yeah, it just took off from there. It just seemed like it's so stupid that it was just perfect. There's one review with that. It's one of my favorites ever. Someone said that it was stupendously moronic, which I just love. If I was going to have a grave, I'd want that written on the headstone, stupendously moronic.
Here lies Bruce, stupendously
moronic.
here's the thing I realized though about that song and the life it has, especially lately. I think there's some like black metal guy that apparently has a good sense of humor somewhere. That
Fenriz,
yeah,
Fenriz of Dark Throne. Yep,
yeah, and
he's a big fan of us. Yeah.
yeah. So anytime I would put that song up on social media or whatever, then there'd be
Yeah.
that guy, and I was like, I don't even know who this is. So like,
Yeah, I didn't know who he was either until a couple of years ago because I didn't really follow that scene in any way. But that's one of the cool things I take pride of with AOD is that, we're popular with people from all different subgenres, kind of, which is kind of cool. Just your straight up thrash people, your metal people, your black metal people, the pop punk people, just all different kinds of people. A lot of that stuff usually stays pretty segregated. You know what I mean? So the fact that so many different styles, people into different styles like us, I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of those early metal people kind of really latched on to the first record in particular, and suddenly you guys were a crossover band.
We fought that, and that was kind of stupid of us in retrospect. We should have just gone for broke, really, and really exploited our friendship with Scott Ian to its fullest.
They could have Stormtroopers of Death could have covered status or just whatever.
Well, in a way, who's to say they really? But I don't want to go there.
Oh, did you ever write songs with Scott Ian?
No, but there are people that say that they came to see us play a lot, And I remember, I forget who, someone in Anthrax once told someone in AOD that they had never jumped in the air until they saw us.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's your fault.
It's our fault. Yep. The white sneakers are not our fault. That was just a total metal thing. But the jumping, that was us.
Right. Well, you guys are also unique because you were around long enough to actually see and witness things like Johnny Thunders, and you brought up Max's Kansas City. So there's I don't want to say 77 era background, but for lack of a better word, you have roots that go way back before the dawning of what they call hardcore or whatever.
Sure, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and you guys were never really, because we've talked a little bit, you guys were never really like metal sort of people, although you did like some rock stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, but did you when I look back at all that stuff, like I never knew a whole lot about New York punk rock really, and I always just immediately went to like you guys because I like the music, but also you guys, were funny, and kind of lighthearted, like having, there was no like agenda for anything, which is, it wasn't like, well, here's our band and here's our statement, and you guys are just like, well, here's our band and we're just we're just regular guys and we have a sense of humor, and that was like
mix and bowl, and
that like I don't want to say everybody had an angle back then, but a lot of people had some sort of, well, this is our thing, we're communist, or we're this or we're that, and you guys were just like pretty lighthearted people that were had a sense of humor, and not everybody had a sense of humor back then. And I always
it was very rare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I grew up sort of like a Mad Magazine kind of kid.
Yeah, sure, of course.
That was my sense of humor.
I think one thing that was a huge influence on us, and I talked about this before. It's almost a unifying thing with a lot of the Northeast bands. I was calling it WORTV core because it was just like this sensibility from watching the specific, growing up with specific television channels like WOR and WPIX, that you could find that sort of theme running through stuff that going all the way back to like the Dictators, like your White Castle commercials, your cheesy monster movies, all that stuff mixed together. I mean, we had it. A lot of the Connecticut bands had it. even like the Beastie Boys are referencing White Castle and, you know, stuff, Channel 9 references and stuff like that, you know. So, and you'll find that in a lot of bands from the Northeast, really, at least the greater New York area, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, it seemed like you guys kind of like, because you had roots going back all that way and your influences of, you know, your sense of humor or whatever. It seemed
Sure.
like Adrenalin OD didn't really belong in any actual one thing. It was kind of like you said,
Sure.
as the years have gone on,
Yeah.
different people have picked up on it. Did you guys ever rub shoulders with Sonic Youth and Agnostic Front? That's probably my most important.
We were down with AF, and I think, I mean, we were aware of Sonic Youth, and I remember at one point, Thurston was an even worse, actually. But
Jack.
yeah, and then I sort of got to know Thurston a little bit more afterward when I had moved up to Connecticut, because he grew up one town over from where I moved, and I'm very familiar with his brother. He would come into the record store I worked at and stuff like that.
Right.
Oh, look, you can see me better now too.
Yeah. Yay.
Cool. Oh, I look like an actual human being now.
Yeah. Now we're at phase 2 of the interview.
Okay.
So I forgot what we were talking about. Which not.
I think we went off in a tangent about Thurston Moore, and I'm glad we stopped then.
So,
Well, you know who actually has jammed with and performed with Thurston is my good buddy Todd from 76%.
oh,
Because he's into he's been into the whole free improv scene for years, and he's been in a couple of projects that Thurston and his brother have played in. Actually, I have a bunch of friends that play with those guys.
right. Was Todd also in CIA?
Todd was in Reflex from Pain.
The other band.
Yep, and he was in, and him and I were in a whole bunch of bands together. In fact, he was one of the main reasons I moved to where I did, just because I knew him. And yeah, from the moment I got there, we'd been in bands together. We were in a band up as recently as maybe like 2 years before I moved here. Actually, we'd done a whole bunch of stuff. We've been in we were in hardcore bands. We were in garage rock bands. The last thing we did was almost like a post-punk thing with we ran beats from a Nintendo DS.
Right.
And then he would rip off old 70s funk bass lines, and then I would rip off Keith Levine over the top of that. And my neighbor is an underground, or my old neighbor was an underground rapper of some renown, and he would just spit over the whole thing. And that was, and you know, that made me, one thing I'm proud of is just getting as far away from, you know, AOD as possible. Do you know what I mean? And
Sure.
And that really did it. You know, that was, I enjoy doing stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, when exactly did Adrenalin? I mean, I realize we're talking about ancient history, and that obviously you've been in a lot of bands since. Adrenalin OD ended in 1990 something.
Yeah, I'm really bad with dates. I want to say 91 or 92.
Right. Yeah, that was after the Ishtar period, which
Ishtar, yep.
Yeah, you posted those pictures, and you guys looked like like a prototype for a stoner rock band or a desert.
We kind of we really had no look or no sound at that point, but and it's funny, everyone's like, you guys look metal, and I'm like, we weren't listening to any metal. We were listening to like Cheap Trick, and I was listening to the Replacements, so I don't know how it came out looking metal, but it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, you didn't have mohawks. Was it ever frustrating at all for you to start all these new bands, and people like me are still going to refer to Adrenalin, or like because you, one of the bands you were in, and I haven't heard it, but you posted this, I think a demo, and just the name of it was like, what a great name for a band, was the New Reagans. Can you?
Oh yeah, sure. That was
a little bit about the new, because that's a great name for a band for any era. Like
that's my Bush era hardcore band. Yeah.
we were you trying to write? Was that the concept, writing?
Yeah, we literally,
Bush it?
me and my buddy came up with that name at the bar the night Bush was inaugurated. We were like, oh man, it's going to be just like having a new Reagan. And we looked at each other, and a week later we were having our first practice.
What
That
were
was
your
a lot.
song titles?
Fast food attitude, celebrity homes, what was the other one? Oh, the Thai food that Pop Punk bought was one of my favorites. That was about a time I went out to Chicago to visit an ex-girlfriend who was dating Ben Weasel, and he paid for the Thai food, and I grabbed the receipt just to give to my friend because I thought it would be really funny. And I was like, this is the receipt for the Thai food that Pop Punk bought. And we were like, oh my God, we have to write that right now. So we did. I'm actually really proud of that whole period, because I was in a band called the Brunch Bummies concurrently with that. And this is all in my 40s. And I really think I peaked in terms of in terms of amount of material and quality of material. I just I was doing really well in my 40s in terms of musical output, and I had good people to work with and everything. And the Brunch Mummies and the new Reagans stuff, we never really got a studio recording the new Reagans. It was all 4-track stuff, but it sounds great though. Do you know what I mean? So those are two of my favorite bands I did actually, and the Brunch Mummies I was in almost as long as I was in AOD. And, it's just, I lived in Western Connecticut. I was pretty much out in the sticks as far as most people were concerned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had a small but loyal following. Then we did a reunion right before I moved here. And that was really cool. We had people come people came from Washington, from North Carolina, and from somewhere else crazy just to see this one show in a tiny bar in Connecticut. And that was really gratifying. So
yeah. Jack quit. Why did Jack quit?
Family stuff. He had kids right from the get-go, really. Right from maybe the first or second year of AOD, him and Sandy had their first child, and he was always the working guy. Even our first 2 tours, we played as a 3-piece across the country until we got to Cali, and he joined us in Cali for those shows. So There's a whole bunch of shows we played as a 3-piece with me on bass. And I often forget that. Sometimes I'll see pictures and be like, oh, damn, that's right. We were a 3-piece until we hit LA. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he had family stuff going on, and he came back and rejoined at certain points too. I think after Keith left, he might have rejoined us for a little bit, but he's still going. Him and Paul are still playing in bands up north, often together. So
right, and Keith was Keith was a pen pal of mine for a long time.
Sure.
Like he was a pen pal. I guess when he was the singer for I think it's Pleased Youth, maybe.
Pleased Youth, yep.
And then he ended up joining you guys for the latter day period before
Cruising with Elvis, yeah.
Right, and then quit before Ishtar. Am I getting the chronology?
Yeah. And then Wayne Garcia played bass for the Ishtar for the end time version of AOD.
Right. Well, real quick, what plans did you guys have that had to be canceled because of this whole weird COVID times?
Yeah, we were, we never got to go to Europe when we were together originally. We came really close. We even got our passports, and we were supposed to go over there. At one point, we were distributed over in the UK by Music for Nations, and they also carried like Metallica and stuff like that. So we had all of our stuff especially the second album was everywhere over in Europe, and so we were supposed to do a tour then, and for whatever reason, the whole thing just fell apart. And then we toured the US extensively, but we just got in right under the wire where it became really easy and common for bands to go to Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We never really got to go. And that was always a big sticking point for us. And we thought this past summer, it was going to be our summer, baby. And we were going to head over there, and we had 2 weeks lined up, and everyone was down with it, and everyone could get the time off, and everything was rolling our way. And the only thing we couldn't figure out was a good name for the tour. And my idea was making Europe great again, but I don't know. It could have been the mega tour. So, but it was pointed out that they might, the sense of humor might not translate as
making
as
Europe or making Europe tolerable again.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the whole thing obviously fell apart. We had a whole bunch of shows based around the Rebellion Fest in Blackpool, and then we had a couple other gigs booked already for that. And so at this point, I mean, who knows? I mean, we chat semi-regularly. We actually just had a couple band Zoom meetings recently just to see what each other were up to.
How's everybody doing?
Everyone's doing great, actually. Yeah. I'm not really holding my breath for a European tour at this point, to be honest with you, because, by the time that happens, we could all be in our 60s at that point. And I don't want to do that, man. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I think if you have an opportunity to do so, you should just do it, because
yeah,
no matter how old and senile we all get,
sure,
you should still do it.
I know. The thing is, though, I mean, the underlying question whenever any AOD reunion is broached is like, can we still do it? Because it's almost like an athletic event in a way. Do you know what I mean? Especially for Dave, for Dave the drummer, but for everyone really. I even noticed when I was starting to practice for the tour that didn't happen was my muscle memory wasn't really where it used to be, and I was like, these songs used to be fairly easy to play, or at least to remember. Yeah. And I had nothing, man. I mean, I had to sit down with the record and be like, oh my god, this is a nightmare. So
the drummer's always the first to go in any of those situations, especially when you're talking about a band that plays fast music. Like,
that's very true. Yep. Yeah. So like I say, I mean, I'd love to go to Europe. I'd love to eat regional cheeses, but I don't. I mean, and who knows when that's really going to open up and become a thing again? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, well, it seems like it's I don't know. It seems more optimistic, right? More optimistic right now.
That's true.
More so than any time since last year when this all started. But I have this belief that people ruin everything. So I'm not holding my breath.
That's true. I'm with you on that. Actually, I'm totally with you on with that concept.
I don't want to think like that. But I just always think in terms of just how the world is run and stuff, and
sure.
And I always think every time I go to like a shopping center or go to the supermarket, and when I leave, see that people can't even put their fucking carts back where they belong. I think if people can't do that in a fucking supermarket.
Oh, I had a horrific experience in a local retail parking lot just the other day, and I always say first of all, Central Florida parking lots they're all designed by idiots. It's just they go in different directions. There's no sort of logic to them. They grow their hedges big enough where you can't see around them to see if other cars are coming. Right. And then they're used by idiots as well as being designed by idiots. So it just gets compounded and compounded. And I had to cut through a Walmart parking lot to get to an access road to get to another store. And so I did that. And there was a guy coming, trying to get he was waiting for a spot. So I turned down the aisle, and the guy is facing me. He's in my lane. He's not in the lane that he should be in. So, and he's blocking the flow of traffic. There are people starting to, so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go around this guy in the opposite lane so he can go and park. But the moment I go into the opposite lane, the dude panics and thinks that I'm trying to snake his parking spot. So, and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me with this. Like, this guy's gonna try to get into a conversation with me for a spot I didn't even want. And I'm actually sort of proud of myself for doing it. All I did is I just held up one hand and I yelled out, from my driver's seat, don't even, just stay where you are. And I just show the guy that I'm going around you. And then I made another turn and I almost got hit by 2 other cars. So it was just, it's ridiculous. This is my complaint. Well, I'm really old now, aren't I? I'm complaining about parking lots.
So future plans include staying alive and helping your mom and crossing your fingers and hoping, not hoping, but like going, man, maybe next year I can go to Europe or something.
Well, I'd like to get something musical going, whether, other than not other than, but just I'd like to get something musical going, period. That's something I'm looking forward to post-pandemic. Because it's been a while. This has been the longest period I really haven't played in a band, which has been almost 4 years. The last show I played was about 4 years ago. So that's a really long period of time for me. I think the only other time that happened to me was in the mid-90s, actually. And then other than that, I'd been not in the band for about 45 minutes at one point until I made a phone call and immediately was in another one. So, I'd like to think I'll still keep playing, and I'd like to think I'm like to think that I will keep getting weirder musically as I get older. That's like something I want to pursue, to be honest with you. My musical taste is going in so many different directions as I've gotten older, and I'd like to expand on that, which doesn't make things easy when you're, I'm sure as you're familiar with, like when you're not pandering to the masses, not the masses, but just even the small mass. And you're weird. That's how I see myself. I see myself, at 70 with a beret doing some weird ass shit that everyone is like, what the fuck? And one person is like, this guy is awesome. That's what I want to be doing.
Well, it's 12 now.
Okay.
I'll let you go, but thanks a lot for doing this. I hope this was
dude, I had a blast. It was a lot of fun, man.